Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into something. Well, something that feels like a crucial game, where the rules are suddenly being changed right at the last minute. Imagine this. You're getting ready for the biggest cricket match of your life. Huge stadium, crowds roaring, you're padded up, ready to face that first delivery. But then, just as the umpire's about to call play, an announcement comes over the speakers. Hold on, we're actually redrawing the boundary lines right now. Oh, and some of you might not be allowed to play anymore because your names aren't on the updated team sheet. Pretty confusing, right? A total curveball. Just chaos when you least need it. Well, something remarkably similar seems to be unfolding right now in Bihar, India, and it involves the very foundation of democracy, the voter rolls. Okay, so on June 27, 2025, the Election Commission of India, the ECI, announced what they're calling a special intensive revision, an SR, of the electoral rolls across the entire state of Bihar. Now, here's the kicker. This announcement comes just weeks, literally weeks, before crucial state assembly elections are supposed to start.
So yeah, unsurprisingly, this move has sparked a lot of controversy, a lot of concern. Our mission today is really to unpack this. Why does it matter so much? What could it actually mean for the millions of voters in Bihar? And maybe most importantly, how does something like this affect trust? Trust in the whole democratic process itself, not just in Bihar, but maybe even more broadly. Okay, let's dig into this.
Yeah, that cricket analogy is spot on, actually, because the ECI is meant to be that neutral referee in India's democracy. Their main job, their core mandate, is ensuring elections are free, fair, and based on, well, accurate information. And a huge part of that, naturally, is keeping the voter lists accurate and up to date. Now, it's completely normal, pretty standard practice, for these lists to get updated regularly. Adding new voters when they turn 18, removing names if someone sadly passed away or moved, fixing typos, that kind of thing. That's just routine maintenance, essential, really, for a healthy system.
Right, so keeping the membership list current. Makes sense.
Exactly. But this special intensive revision, this SR in Bihar, that's a whole different ballgame. Think of it less like a quick update and more like throwing out the entire guest list for a massive wedding and starting completely from scratch. It's a top-to-bottom recheck of every single voter record. Usually you'd only do something this drastic for really clear, significant reasons, like after a national census shows huge population shifts, maybe, or if there's been, major demographic changes in an area because of some large event.
Okay, so a big undertaking, only done when absolutely necessary.
Precisely. And what's really causing concern in Bihar right now is that the ECI hasn't given a clear, transparent, widely accepted reason for doing this SR, especially, as you said, so incredibly close to the elections. We've heard these sort of vague claims about illegal voters or cross-border infiltration.
Serious claims.
Very serious. But presented without solid proof, without concrete data. It's a bit like saying your house is haunted, but you don't have any photos or recordings, just a feeling. It just leaves so much room for doubt, for speculation, and that really chips away at public confidence.
Yeah, that lack of concrete evidence seems absolutely central here.
Yeah.
It really brings us to why this specific SIR is raising so many red flags. Let's start with the timing, because that feels just crucial. Announcing this kind of massive overhaul weeks before an election, it's like deciding to repaint your entire house the day before you host a massive party you've planned for months. It's chaotic, it seems completely unnecessary right then, and it's almost guaranteed to cause a huge administrative mess.
Right. It just seems counterproductive if the goal is a smooth election.
Exactly. And it's not just inconvenient. It could easily look like a strategic move, maybe an attempt to change the playing field right before the game starts. And that's deeply problematic for democracy. And like you said, these claims about illegal voters, okay, potentially serious, but where's the proof? Where's the data that justifies such a drastic step at this exact moment?
Yeah.
Without that solid evidence, it feeds suspicion, doesn't it? It makes people wonder what the real motive is.
It really does. And the potential impact here goes way beyond just administrative headaches. Think about the scale, especially for a huge group in Bihar, the migrant workers. Bihar has massive outward migration, right? We're talking over 70 lakh, that's 7 million people working outside the state.
Yeah.
In Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, sending money home.
Yeah, a huge number. They're still residents, though.
Absolutely. They have every right to vote back in Bihar. But if this intensive revision suddenly demands, say, physical presence for verification or documents they just don't have with them while they're working hundreds of miles away, well, a lot of them could just get dropped from the list. Maybe not intentionally, but effectively disenfranchised.
Right. It's like asking someone to show their local library card when they're stuck on a business trip across the country.
Precisely. It's a practical impossibility for many. And this vulnerability, it doesn't stop there. There's a genuine fear that marginalized communities, minorities, Dalits, the very poor, could get hit hardest by this.
Why them specifically?
Well, often these groups have fewer resources to deal with bureaucratic hurdles. Maybe they lack certain documents or face literacy challenges or simply can't afford to take time off work to go sort out paperwork. It just makes them much more likely to fall through the cracks in a process like this.
So the burden falls unevenly.
It certainly could. You know, the analogy might be like a library suddenly deciding to purge its shelves without carefully checking who actually uses those books. You risk ending up with a skewed collection that doesn't serve everyone. And when you put all that together, the timing, the lack of evidence, the potential impact on migrants and marginalized groups, you see how such a revision could potentially suppress votes from certain demographics, or maybe even add votes in ways that aren't clear. And that could absolutely alter outcomes in close races.
Wow. So it's not just a cleanup. It could actually change who wins.
That's the fear. It's like subtly changing the rules of the game while the players are already on the field. It can definitely tip the scales.
And what's really unsettling is that this isn't happening in a vacuum. This Bihar situation seems to fit into a wider pattern, doesn't it?
It does, unfortunately. And what's fascinating, in a worrying way, is how these seemingly dry administrative processes, like voter list revisions, can potentially become tools for political influence when there isn't enough transparency or oversight. It's not just about if votes get suppressed, but how this kind of administrative tidying up can subtly reshape the electorate itself. It makes it really hard to challenge later.
So have we seen this kind of thing before?
There's certainly been instances that raise similar concerns. If you look back at the 2019 general elections, for example, there was some academic research. Sabyasachi Das from Ashoka University did a study. He analyzed the results and found that in seats that were really closely contested, the ruling party, the BJP, seemed to win more often than statistical models would have predicted.
Suggesting something else might have been going on.
Suggesting that maybe voter roll manipulation could have played a role. It pointed towards potential irregularities that weren't just random chance.
Okay. And more recently?
Well, during the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, there were also reports, quite a few reports actually, of sudden kind of unexplained jumps in the number of registered voters in certain states. And again, observers noted that these spikes often seem to benefit the ruling party. It's another piece of the puzzle, another data point suggesting something unusual might be happening.
Any other examples?
Yeah, there were some audits done in Karnataka by Abusala Sharif. His findings were pretty stark. He found that nearly 20% of eligible adult Muslims seem to be missing from the voter lists there.
20%? That's huge.
It's a massive number. And what's more, in about 30 to 35% of Muslim households they looked at, only one person was registered to vote, even when multiple eligible adults clearly lived there. This really points towards a pattern, potentially a pattern of selective exclusion, where certain communities seem to be disproportionately left off the rolls.
So when you connect those dots, 2019, 2024 Karnataka.
Exactly. When you connect these examples from different times, different places, they paint a concerning picture. It suggests a trend. And the current special intensive revision in Bihar, well, it seems to fit right into that pattern, which is why it's raising so many alarms about fairness and impartiality.
Those historical parallels are,
Yeah.
they're quite chilling. Given all this and the huge stakes involved, we need to understand the legal side. What are the rules supposed to be for this kind of thing? Where's the accountability?
Right. The main law here is the Representation of People Act, 1950. That's the rule book for maintaining voter rolls in India. Now, it definitely allows for revisions. You need them, right? To keep lists clean, remove genuine duplicates, people who've passed away, that sort of thing.
Sure. Basic updates.
Basic updates. But the crucial point in the law is that any revision, especially a big one, must be based on credible, verifiable evidence. And it has to be done transparently. Something like this special intensive revision in Bihar, it absolutely needs a very clear, strong, publicly stated justification. Especially, again, happening so close to an election. The ECI's actions need to be seen as fair, inclusive, and totally non-discriminatory. That's essential for maintaining public trust.
And how are the opposition parties reacting to this? I imagine they're not happy.
No, not at all. There's been strong pushback. Manoj Kumar Shah from the Rashtriya Janata Dal, the RJD, he's been very vocal. They're demanding the ECI halts this SIR immediately, at least until they provide a proper detailed explanation and a transparent plan to the public. They're also calling for independent audits of areas that have seen big changes in voter numbers recently, say over the last 5 years. And they want the ECI to release voter rolls in a machine-readable format broken down by demographics.
Though basically demanding full transparency. Show us the recipe before you cook the meal.
That's a good way to put it. Transparency is non-negotiable if you want people to trust the final dish, so to speak. And Manoj Kumar Jha, he put it very directly. He said, and I'm quoting loosely here, "This sudden SAR in Bihar smells of foul play. It feels like an attempt to manipulate the voter base, to tilt the scales." He added something like, "Democracy is at risk when the very institutions meant to protect voting rights are seen as suppressing them. We need accountability."
Wow. That's a powerful statement, and it really points to the bigger picture, doesn't it? This isn't just about Bihar politics. It's about the health of India's democracy overall. If the Election Commission, the body that's supposed to be the impartial umpire, starts being seen as potentially biased, that erodes trust everywhere.
It absolutely does. And that raises a really important question. What happens when that fundamental belief that every single vote counts, that the process is fair for everyone, starts to wobble? The consequences can be really serious. If you disenfranchise large groups of people, it doesn't just affect who wins an election. It can lead to real social unrest, deeper polarization, a feeling of alienation among those communities.
Like that library example again. If whole sections are missing, people get frustrated, they feel ignored.
Exactly. And worse, if people start feeling their vote doesn't matter anyway, or that the system is rigged, they might just check out. They might stop participating in democracy altogether. Or, even more worrying, they might turn to less democratic ways to make their voices heard. So it becomes absolutely vital for the ECI to work hard to restore and maintain that public trust. Through complete transparency, clear communication, engaging with everyone involved, parties, civil society, the public, the legitimacy of our whole system really hangs on people believing the electoral process itself is fair.
That's such a critical point. Because disenfranchisement isn't just a concept, it affects real people. Let's try to picture it. Imagine a small village somewhere in Bihar. Maybe half the working age men, let's say, work in big cities like Mumbai or Surat for most of the year. They come home for festivals, maybe, but their permanent address, their voter registration, is back in that village. Now, if this SR suddenly requires documents they left back home, or demands they show up in person right now, well, many of them could just get knocked off the list.
Through no fault of their own, really.
Right. And think about an election that's decided by just a few thousand votes, which happens all the time. Suddenly, disenfranchising even a relatively small number of voters from a few key areas, that could totally change the outcome for the whole state. It could shift who holds power.
The margins can be that thin.
Definitely. Or think about a constituency where, say, the opposition usually has a slight advantage.
Yeah.
If this revision process somehow ends up removing more voters from communities that traditionally support that opposition, well, you can see how that could easily tip the balance.
It could flip the seat.
Exactly. So this isn't just administrative tidying. It's an action that could potentially reshape the political map. It really is like changing that guest list at the last minute for a crucial event. You risk silencing voices, and the whole thing feels, well, unfair. But, and this is really important, as a voter, as someone listening to this, you're not just a bystander. You actually have a really crucial role in making sure things stay fair and transparent.
That's right. Citizen vigilance is key.
Absolutely. So what can you actually do? First, check your own status. Go to the ECI website, find the Voter Services portal, and make absolutely certain your name is still on that list. Don't assume it is. Second, stay informed. Follow reliable news sources about this SR in Bihar and any updates. And be really careful about misinformation. There's often a lot flying around designed to confuse people.
Good advice. Critically evaluate sources.
Third, if you see something that looks wrong, any irregularities in your own area, report it. Tell the authorities. Don't just think someone else will handle it. And finally, maybe the most fundamental thing, use your vote. Exercise that right. It's the absolute bedrock of democracy. By doing these things, you're actively helping to keep the whole process accountable and legitimate. Okay, so just to wrap up our deep dive today, the ECI's decision for this special intensive revision in Bihar, without really clear public reasons, has definitely raised serious concerns. The timing, right before elections, the lack of solid evidence for the claims made, it's deeply problematic. We've talked about how it could potentially disenfranchise millions, especially migrant workers and marginalized groups, and worryingly, how it seems to echo some past patterns where voter roll issues might have impacted close elections. The core takeaway here really is, every single vote matters. And for that to mean anything, the process has to be transparent, fair, and seen to be fair. That trust is essential.
It really is. And maybe this brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to consider beyond just Bihar. How do we ensure that fundamental belief that every vote counts stays solid, especially when the very bodies designed to protect that right face this kind of scrutiny? What role does your awareness, your vigilance, your active participation play in actually upholding that fragile, vital trust in our democratic institutions?
Those are absolutely the key questions this whole situation forces us to ask, aren't they? A
Well,
lot to think about there. Thank you for diving deep with us today. Your engagement, your awareness, it really does make a difference in keeping our democratic processes healthy. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on how this develops in Bihar, and we encourage you to do the same. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep demanding that transparency.